don't give a shit. Aha, you tagged me in a post, so it must be working.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Something went wrong.
I think we're live. We're live.
Okay. So from what I can see, hold on a second, let me redo this. Just see, okay, yep, I see it on yours. Yay.
Okay, we're live.
I see it on yours, and I'm gonna go live. And it's not live on mine, so let me go share that real quick.
Okay. Thanks for sitting tight, everyone. We're having a very authentic beginning.
Start a watch party. No. There we go. Okay, it's been shared to my timeline. At least it says it does. So I'm just going to trust that that's what happened. And now I'm going to shut all that down. And yeah, cool. Let's do it.
Beautiful. Well, welcome everybody to episode number 29 of Exploring Genuine Transformation. My name is Lori Beth, and I am oddly sitting in a very small booth in Bali because it's the best Wi-Fi and the only way for us to stream live. So I find that kind of ironic because obviously Bali is like absolutely gorgeous, but all you're going to see is me in this white room. This is a weekly interview series that I have been doing for about 7 months now, where I'm interviewing thought leaders, coaches, healers, all kinds of people really who are at the leading edge of transformation. And what this show has been really interested in, what I've been interested in this show in exploring is more of a transformation that's about having more of ourselves, feeling more whole for the sake of freedom in the moment and all kinds of other, I guess we could call it inner transformations that aren't necessarily about having what we want in life, but simply about living and being human. So I am really excited today to be interviewing coach and guide. That's what I'm calling you, at least right now. Shanti Zimmerman. And I just want to actually pull this up on my page as well to make sure that we're going strong. Looks like we are. And so actually, I love what, usually I ask people for a bio, and I want to introduce Shanti now to everyone, for those of you who don't know her. And usually I ask for a bio, and I actually get one from her, and so I just went to her page. And what I love about, that this topic that we're going to explore is authenticity, and Shanti has such a real human, down-to-earth way of living, basically, and of doing business and of doing life. And that's really what we're going to be exploring today. And I find it extremely refreshing. And I love that what I found on her page was a cover photo that said, "Being Shanti, playfully serious about being free." So, just even that is really embodying what we're going to be talking about today. And what she also said, which I love the succinctness of this, is that she's a coach who facilitates the crafting of boundaries, emotional resiliency, and ownership of a life worth living. So, I think I'm going to leave it at that because that feels like it gets to the heart of, of you. And I mean, there's so much more to you, but obviously, like, the heart of really what you're offering. I think there is.
I felt at home. I'm like, yes, that's me. So it's perfect.
Awesome. I love it. Well, also just the simplicity. Shanti and I had a preliminary conversation about this show, being on this show together, as I always do. And what I really walked away with, or what I felt during the call, was just just like this feeling of just like, oh, I just feel so good being me, and doing all the human things that we do together. Um, uh, and including like, what do I want right now? What do I feel right now? What's actually true right now? So I want to hand it over to Shanti. And is there anything that you would add to my introduction, or anything that kind of came up for you as I was talking?
No, I think it sounded really, really, it was perfect. You did amazing.
Yay, yay.
Like, no, we're good.
Cool. Well,
No?
there's a lot more to say, and I think where I'd love to start with you is, if you just could, authenticity is a word that has been thrown around in these last many years, and I even noticed. I feel like I'm quite an authentic person, whatever that means, but I lead with a lot of authenticity, and I noticed that over time that could actually become almost another way of being, like, oh, I'm being authentic, versus like what's really alive in the moment. So that's just one example of kind of like, sort of how that word has maybe become a concept. And I'd love for you to just share with everyone, what authenticity means to you, and also why you chose this as the topic. So what's like really alive for you around this topic?
So authenticity, like many words in the coaching industry, has been butchered, in my opinion. Butchered and used as like a strategy, used as a concept, used as a and so in the spirit of bringing that back to what's real and what's raw, for me, authenticity means being who you say you are, exactly who you say you are in every moment of your life. So, and that requires you to be super honest with yourself. Find the places in yourself where you're lying to yourself about who you think you should be, or you're still holding on to ideas of what your parents or society or culture or school or the media tells you, so that you can actually root out who you are. And my favorite form of that is like, who are you to yourself when nobody else is around?
Mm.
And do you feel at home in your skin? And do you like yourself? Like, forget self-love, because that's a whole other ball of bull crap. But like, do you like yourself when you're just you, and you're not feeling any kind of anything to perform, you're not feeling any kind of anything to be something for anyone else, you're just you. And then live that into every moment of your life. That to me is authenticity.
Mm.
And being who you say you are, that piece is taking responsibility for who you are. It says, I'm alive here today and I choose to be this way. And not like I'm just some willy-nilly thing that's happening. I'm actually choosing to be here with like a deep intention.
Mm. Mm. So I feel like you said two different things, that are really important, and we could riff on both of them. I mean, I think the first thing I just want to highlight is, again, the simplicity of, asking the questions like, do I like myself? Do I feel good in my own skin? Do I like my own company? So kind of at the basis, there's so much, I mean, in the coaching world, but I'll just everywhere, there's so much hype about kind of like, what am I trying to create? And what am I trying to do? And what is an actually like happy, fulfilling life? There's something about when you say that, it's like, that is the foundation, right? Like that's the first thing. How can anything feel good if, how can you feel good if you don't actually feel comfortable in your own skin? And if you're
Yeah.
not,
Oh,
don't fully enjoy your own company. Mm-hmm.
correct. And you're not like, I sleep well every day because I like, and like, I have my own back. So even if I have shitty behaviors, because I'm human, I'm fallible, right? But that I am correct within myself. And if I'm not correct within myself, I do what I need to do to come back to that place of rightness within myself.
Mm.
And that place of rightness only I can define. So somebody else might think or see that my behavior is not correct by their opinion and their truth in themselves. And they have every right to that opinion. But I have to be right with myself. Yeah, it's nice to be right with other people, but I don't have to live in that experience of being with them. I have to live in the experience of being myself. And so I can look in the mirror, I can go to bed at night knowing that I showed up exactly who I say I am. I showed up exactly the way I like showing up. And I got this from a lot of what I teach is from observing my children. So Noah went through a phase, he's my oldest, he's 19 now, where he was doing a lot of what people would consider acts of kindness. And coming home and talking about it. And I said, I could see that it lit him up. And I said, this is really great. I mean, beyond the things you're doing for others, what about it is making you light up like that? And he goes, Mom, he was about 11. I just really like myself when I do it. And I was like, that right there is real.
Mm.
And so that is what I want to live my life doing. I really like myself doing the things I'm doing.
Mm. Mm. I mean, what I hear also in that story of your son is that it doesn't even matter as much what he's doing. I mean, his response is like, I like me when I'm doing this. And so it doesn't, sure, there are things that we like more than others, just we all have preferences, but that fundamentally, yeah, when you can like yourself, it's like, it doesn't, I could be doing this, I could be doing that, and I still feel good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or like the quintessential thing where somebody's telling you, well, you need to change your behavior. And I'm always a big no to anything outside you telling you that. And by the way, you need to change your behavior. You need to get over your crap. You need to get out of your comfort zone. I'm like, there's nobody else has any authority there. And I go, well, this doesn't feel good to me. I don't feel like myself when I even juxtaposition myself in that scenario. And somebody would say, well, then you just need to get over yourself. I'm like, no, I need to be as full of myself as I possibly can be and keep taking up all the space that is me, because then I can actually live authentically true to myself. It's not, I want to say it's easy. It's simple. It's not easy.
Yeah, I'm curious if that's a really beautiful example. Like, I'm curious if you can give an example of how you, and I know you have, this is your practice with yourself and what you teach your clients, but how you, kind of how you know when it is coming from that you-ness. Because that's a really good example, right? It's what you gave. Like, it's like, for one person, it could be like, wow, I need to get out of my comfort zone. And that's actually the truth in this moment, right? Like, that's actually what my beingness is inviting me into. Or it could be like, actually, that's not what my beingness is inviting me into right now. It's actually a concept, right? And it's coming from outside of me, right? Which is, I think, what can happen, or some kind of conditioning. But I'm curious how you would kind of coach somebody in, like, having that kind of knowingness that they're able to trust themselves to move in the way that is right.
I get this question a lot. And so I have a deep belief that the number one life skill, especially going forward with technology being what it is and what it will be and how quickly it develops in that direction, is to trust yourself. And then automatically, usually the question is like, yeah, but how? That like, huh? Yeah. Okay, that's a nice, but it is the number one. And I call it a life skill because while trusting yourself is innate, so long as it hasn't been fucked with. Oh, yeah, so long as it hasn't been messed with as a kid, trust is a really innate thing. You trust yourself. I feel this way. I smell that thing. I taste this thing. It's not for me. There's a very innate ability to interact with the environment and trust your own information that's coming from the inside of you. And then there's a whole lot of static that starts in childhood to kind of peanut butter that trust. So it's a life skill, especially as an adult. It's relearning a skill set that is innate, but also has to be practiced. And so there's a lot of layers. One of the biggest layers being that you trust yourself no matter what. I have an example from, yes, I'll give you so there was this man on Facebook who I felt I couldn't feel malice, but he was a little off for me. Mm-hmm. He had only posted on things. He was really bothered. He posted on 2 of my posts where I was just really clearly self-defined. It made him uncomfortable. And then I posted about my daughter and her artwork, and he made a comment, and my initial reaction was like, ew, but it wasn't quite like, I wasn't my negligence, right? It wasn't quite whatever. And so then I said, honey, come here, to my daughter. And I said, this isn't, I didn't say anything. I said, I just want you to read this. And her response was like, it was a real fuck no. Like, to the point of like judging him as a pedophile. Like, she took it to the whole 9 yards. Okay. And I was like, fuck, like that clear. Now, mind you, she wasn't saying this to him or anybody publicly. And when I shared it, I asked her, but it was her clarity came right out of her mouth. It was crystal clear. It was like, that's not right. It's disgusting. It's creepy. It's not good for me. I would tell him to fuck off. And one response of somebody in the comment section when I talked about this, like I was talking about how crystal clear that is. And his response was, well, don't you think that's kind of overreacting or maybe a bit overprotective? And so this is what can happen when you trust yourself and you're clear. It can cause other people to feel really uncomfortable with their own lack of clarity. You can't possibly be that clear. Oh yeah, but I was. And it came out of my mouth just like that. And the conversation is, even if it is overreacting, even if it is overprotecting, I'm still going to trust her, and I'm still going to trust myself. He could be a great guy. I mean, he's got a family. He's got people that love him, that fawn over. I mean, that's his life. He's a fuck no for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really love that. I mean, the whole story. And I think that's what I was thinking towards the end of the story, is that it's trusting our intuition. Like, it's that inner trust that, like, we don't make the other person wrong. It just isn't right for us, which I think is different than, saying,
like when I spoke about it too, I didn't name him. I didn't screenshot his information. Nobody, there's one person that knows who it was because she's watched the conversation unfold. But I'm not like trying to like bash him. When I'm talking about things, I hardly ever talk about the person. I'm talking about the behavior. Mm-hmm. I always say patterns, not people. Mm-hmm. And yet, a lot of us go through that place where we tend to look at this bullshit myth of the potential in somebody. There's no such thing as potential, because potential can only be a real thing in the future, and we're not in the future. But so we'll look at somebody and be like, oh, well, they were kind of really mean, but I can see their heart, or they just like backstabbed me or betrayed me or talked shit about me, and I walked in on it. But I know that they care about me. So we'll often talk ourselves out of, we'll look at the person and not the behavior. I highly suggest you look at the behavior and trust yourself. Mm-hmm. Trust what you are seeing. Because if you don't, you get yourself into some pretty sticky situations.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing with that what you're also encouraging is that trust what you feel, trust your own kind of inner knowing, and if, like, you can still have compassion for somebody, but it doesn't mean that you need, like what you were just describing actually to me, it sounds to me like almost like it's not just like like I have my boundaries, I know what's clear for me, and I have compassion for another person. It's more like, oh, I'm explaining why it's kind of okay because they actually are a good person, which sort of explains away. This is like how we learn to kind of explain away what we know, like what we know to be true for ourselves. But I do want to I want to take this to like even a deeper layer for those who struggle to really trust themselves, because I hear what you're saying as, that
I have something
as someone
that might help in that direction.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say, I'll just say, like, what I hear is you're speaking to a level at which like the trust is already there. It's just listening. And I think for some people, they're so muddled in kind of not trusting themselves. And there's so many kind of like layers and cobwebs and patterns on top of it that it's hard to even know, like, where is this coming from? Is it coming from like this old conditioning when I was 5? Is it coming from this? Is it coming from that? So I'm curious kind of how you know, as you've worked with so many people doing this kind of work and helping people to really access their own self-trust, I'm like, you know, obviously you've worked with many different flavors of this. You know, how do you kind of help somebody to who really like it's not even a matter of just like the deep listening and I get it and I just need to follow it. It's like there's something much deeper that is buried.
So I'm talking stories, and it's really, really important to know that I am simply pointing to possibilities and examples of this because every single person experiences their intuition and their clarity very uniquely. So if I tell you how I experience it, that might help you kind of grok towards the direction of yours. But if you expected yours to feel like how I describe it, it would be a sad disservice. Remember, this is about trusting yourself, not trusting what I tell you. This is super important, right? It's about, okay, so there's a lot of different layers that there's very specifically a conglomerate of things that need to be moved out of the way to really be helpful. These are blame, shame, guilt, doubt, and unnecessary fear. So blame, shame, and guilt are not innate, natural emotional responses. They're learned behaviors. So having said that, without going like into like the different, anytime there's shame or guilt, it's a lie. Every single time. There's never an exception. So if you get clarity and you feel ashamed because it's so fucking clear, there's a sign that your clarity is present. It can be something like, I don't want to talk to my mother ever again. Something really intense. And then you just feel so much shame and so much guilt. Instead, that shame and guilt is the static. It's messing up your own compass. And so if you can move it, it doesn't mean you have to automatically say, fuck you, mom. That doesn't have to be the action step, but that you can move the shame and guilt out of the way and just validate. That's what I'm feeling right now. I don't want to talk to my mother ever again. And hold yourself in that clarity and be honest with yourself. You don't have to do shit. That's our fear. If I hear my clarity, I have to do something. And there is a certain time when that becomes true, but never ever until you're ready. And only you can know when you're ready to take that step from clarity to action like that. There's time, I mean, I would say 80% of my life is that. And there's other times where it can take me months to act and to change something in my life or my environment with the clarity I knew months ago. And that's just how it works because there's no formula here. This is not linear. It's completely non-linear and unique to every single person. So trusting yourself requires to kind of like begin to swipe left. I don't know what it is on those apps. Like when you don't want it, I don't know if you swipe left or right, but whatever way you swipe, it's shame is not here for me. Guilt, now they're coping mechanisms. They kept us safe, but they're not necessary at all. And doubt, same thing. If I'm doubting something I'm feeling, it means I'm headed in the right direction. I'm actually on path. I usually call it it's the cheerleader. Doubt's like, yeah, you're going the right way. Even though it's saying, you're stupid, don't go this way, you're dumb. You can't trust yourself. Like, if that aspect shows up, I'm like, oh, I'm about to do something very, very different. That's what doubt is. Doubt is I'm changing my behavior and doubt flares.
Can you give an example of that? That's a little different than shame. And I mean, yeah.
It's a slightly different, it all kind of has, it's all in the same kind of basket, like that they're all the eggs in the same basket, but they do have distinct differences. So doubt shows up when I'm actually in the process of changing my choices or changing my behavior, because that's what behavior is. I'm making a different choice right now. So the very first time that it really clicked, I was on the phone organizing a retreat, and it was a beautiful house. And I was on the phone with the person, and it was just weird and off. I had no reasons like that I could have brought to you and said, look, this is why this lady's weird, or this is why it's not. Like there was no way for me to prove externally that what I felt was right. Wasn't like, I'm like, do I want to take my people to a house where I feel like that with the person who's curating it? But being like a people pleaser, and wanting people to like and wanting not to rock the boat and all of that, I was like, oh, I could feel myself kind of teeter totter, but the clarity was so clear. Like, this isn't going to work. And I knew that I was going to have to call her up and say, this isn't going to work. Thank you and goodbye, which was a new behavior pattern for me. Right. And then all the gooks started coming up like, maybe you're wrong. And maybe you're just overreacting. Are you sure? That's what doubt is. Are you sure? It's going to ask you. Yeah, I'm sure. Thanks. And that's what I've learned to do now. Yeah, I'm good. Like, I don't even entertain it because my boundary system's really clear.
Yeah.
And so then the way to kind of the antidote to that doubt was just to get back on the phone and say, look, it's not going to work for me. And she's like, oh, why? And I'm like, it's just, that's all. You don't have to give anybody any reasons. Another big thing about clarity is like, it's not working. This is a no for me. I deeply appreciate your time. Thank you very much and have a nice life. But no, like, well, your tone of voice was really shitty and you didn't seem really happy. Like, none of that. Just clarity on my side.
I mean, you said that doubt is present when you're going to make a different decision. And I think what you're, from the example, and from examples I can also think of in my own life, I think what you might be speaking to is you're making a different decision where you're not kind of doing the thing because you feel like you should, but is that what you mean by that? Like but no, you don't mean that.
Yes, you are about to act on your own clarity without anybody else's permission.
Got it. Oh, I see.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I thought that you meant. I just know for me,
we doubt ourselves because we're taught as children to look to authority. Am I allowed to do this? We're looking, and when we're little in our nervous systems, we're actually looking up. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a really interesting somatic experience to place yourself back at eye level with everybody. Like, to just create that, boom, I'm eye level with everyone. I'm no longer looking up to anyone. Then pedestals, that's also something that I teach, right? About pedestals are not a good idea. So we're taught to like constantly look outside for the permission to be clear. Am I allowed to know what I know? And the only place that permission can come from is inside. And when you start to give yourself that, when your permission starts to be self-sourced, that's when your doubt will get the loudest. Are you sure? There's nobody giving you, wait, where's the authority? Where's the person saying I'm allowed to cross the street?
But what you're saying with doubt is that it's that doubt's flavor is kind of like, there's a signal inside telling you, okay, this isn't quite right for me, but I'm doubting it because I have a part of me that feels like I should do this, or I don't want to disappoint, or, some kind of old belief system. But that's why you said it's like, but then there's the other part of the doubt that's actually the thing saying, wait a second, this isn't right. And so then when you make that's where you're making a new choice, because doubt's telling you, wait, it's time for you to make a new choice. It's time for you to kind of go down the road.
For example, I decided, I teach the clarity of boundaries. It's a boundary course. And I've decided I don't know what's next, but there's some other new iteration of it. And I decided I'm not going to teach it the way I teach it live to the public again. February is the last time. And it wasn't just like, oh, overnight simple. Like, I'm actually still a little bit, whoa, because it's so impactful. It's so successful. It really fucking works for people. And like, this morning, I got 2 messages from people who took it months ago, and they're like, look at how much it's still affecting, because it's a life skill, which means it's lifelong. It's not something that's just, and then I sit back and I go, What the fuck am I doing? There's the doubt that comes up. Like, this is so successful. People are getting such good results financially, spiritually, mentally, physically. For me, this has been a huge success. For the people in it, I have not had a one unsatisfied person. That's like really big. There's over 100 people. There's somebody who just signed up to take it for the 4th time.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
and that happens, and I'm like, the fuck am I doing? Like, what the fuck? But the clarity when it really dropped in was so clear. This is the last time like this, Shanti. It's done.
Hmm.
And I will follow that wherever it takes me because I have a lot of practice. But the doubt still comes. What are you doing? Are you sure about this? And before where that made me unstable, like I felt wobbly. Now what I do is I anchor back into that moment of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
This is right for me. And it allows me to enter in this last season of the clarity of boundaries. I have so much energy and so much, like, I'm so ready to teach this again. It's like the energy is so clean and so clear. And so I stay focused there because I know that doubt is a distraction. But what the doubt does, are you sure? It allows me to reaffirm my clarity, not to doubt it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's a couple of
Yes,
really
I'm sure.
we're having, I think, a little delay. There's a couple of really cool things that you said in there that I just wanted to highlight. Or one that like, if you were, the doubt is actually in that case, it's sort of like going into the mind, right? It's like, well, this clarity came, but that can't make sense. So I think that's another clue to also living what this topic is, living an authentic life, living a true life, right? It's like when we go into our heads and we think, oh, well, I have this clarity, but I'm supposed to, like, this would make sense business wise, or this would make sense because it would serve the most amount of people. And so I think that there's something really powerful in that. And then it also just brings me back to the topic of authenticity, because it's like, but what's actually true for you, is that you've experienced a moment of clarity and you don't know where it's going to lead. So you're kind of on the edge, right? You're on a vulnerable edge.
I call it the bleeding edge.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's brutal.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable.
Yeah.
And yet I've spent enough time there, so to trust that I'm in the right place.
I mean, I think all of what we're talking about is in the realm of authenticity. And I think it'd be beautiful for you to speak about that bleeding edge, because I think it seems like, sort of living in a truly authentic way, from your definition, involves listening to what comes, even if it doesn't make like logical sense. So being in your clarity and living in your truth. And I know that bleeding edge, includes like, how does this affect me? What's it like to be in the unknown? How is this going to affect other people? Like, there's this, really sort of, that's why I call it vulnerable, but like raw, vulnerable, tender experience of being human. So I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit more.
We kind of spoke about this. It's like people like to use the word badass or something. I said, look, or bravery, or you're so courageous. And I'm like, dude, I haven't been courageous a day in my life. Okay. Like, I have just learned to listen and trust even when there's no reason for me to trust. I trust myself beyond and above everything and anything and anyone. And that trust has never taken me anywhere bad. It takes me to the edge of like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. And having to sit in that, in a world that tells you we live in a world that says you need to be defined in a certain way by the world standard, or this cultural standard, or the societal standard. And if you're defined or individuated in a different way, you're not included. And so you have to just choose to belong to yourself wherever you are. So if I walk into any room, I belong to myself. I belong in that room because guess what? I put myself in it. I didn't just randomly show up in the room. Like I put myself in the room. So therefore I belong. And if I get down to like the bleeding edge, we've been taught to kind of like steer away from what's uncomfortable. And our clarity is not comfortable. It is so, it gets more comfortable, but clarity is simple, like direct. It's your own truth, and your clarity is not going to come to you in a fucking paragraph. Like it's going to be one sentence to maximum of like clear, and that's at the mental level. This is also a world that tells us our intelligence is in our head, that it's only mental, that it's mental intelligence that rules the world. But I don't believe that. Like when doubt comes in, like it moves into the mind, I recognize the mind is a mechanism of my intelligence, but it is not my intelligence. It's a part of the whole entire part of me, my emotions, my body, my somatic experience. It's all connected. If you look at the nervous system, there's no fucking way that the mind is the ultimate intelligent master of the human being. It's not possible. So when you drop out of being mind led, you have all these different, you have more information available that isn't playing games. It's not fucking with you. It's clear. And when you're used to being kind of like ping ponged everywhere, and you're used to being pulled out of your clarity in all these ways, and all of a sudden you're in your clarity, it's like wide open empty space because it's clear. There's so many times that I've in conversations, I'm clear and somebody else perceives that as aggression. That has been one of the most shocking things for me. Of and I just recognize that's just something that's happening when my clarity, and I'm not being aggressive, I'm not raising my voice, my tone is normal, I'm not, there's nothing, no hoopla going on in my body. So when it's taken like that, I sit in myself and I just check, am I being aggressive, am I angry, like is that what's happening here? No, that's not what's happening here. I'm just really clear, and that clarity can cause somebody else to feel uncomfortable for whatever their reasons are. Does that mean I stop being clear? No. But that's what we've kind of been taught. You're making me uncomfortable, stop it. Instead of, I'm uncomfortable, let me figure out what I need. And often that's going to be I always tell people, first line of a boundary is to walk away. That will be your choice 95% of the time. And it's powerful. We've been taught that that's the pathetic choice. It's the most powerful choice. It goes against everything that we've been told. My well-being is my number one priority. It's how I raise my kids too. I go to their school meetings and this and that is wrong, and they're forgetting, and and I'm like, well, is my child well? Is their well-being, who they are, their sense of themselves, are they well here? Because that's all I care about. I understand these are your metrics, and my kid spends a fucking shit ton of time with you. He spends more time with you. They spend more time with their teachers. They don't want to be homeschooled because that would be my choice, but they don't want that. They're choosing for themselves. And so I understand all of this, and I will work with you and I will work with him, but not at the detriment of his well-being, because that's for me the most important.
Yeah.
And like, the metrics that aren't graded, put on the test, you're like, oh, they're all the time. They're so clear in their opinions. It's amazing. They never falter. They're willing to stand in their opinions. They're so kind to other people. They really look out for the underdog. Like the social metrics, my kids are amazing, but that doesn't get put on like the how you grade. But I don't give a shit. That's outside the box. The teachers really don't know what to do because they can feel, I could see them, their mind goes, holy shit, like what I'm doing is correct. It's right. But it doesn't fit the standard of what it's supposed to.
Yeah, and it's also speaking to, I actually have been a psychotherapist with children, so I've seen this again and again, and it's also speaking to how we have so much focus. This is a little bit of an aside to our topic, but so much focus on, well,
Perfect. Because I'm
oh, actually, I was going to
parenting.
say so much focus, in our schooling system, but also just generally on, like this kind of external success, not like internal emotional well-being, right? And so, I mean, yeah, I've seen that again and again. It's like, oh,
Well,
my child is cutting themselves, but I'm not really paying attention to that. I care about how they're doing in math. It's like, what? How did we get here?
yeah,
But I want to,
metrics brought here
yeah,
by putting.
yeah, I want to go back to something because there's so much that you said in there. So we were starting. My original question was looking at kind of that like edge of that sort of bleeding edge that you're calling it, which I think includes, it seems like through the work or through how you see it, right? Like, and how you live it. It's like, it includes putting your well-being first, knowing your clarity, having your boundaries. And I think you just spoke to that piece really beautifully. I mean, even when you said like for 95% of the time, it's like, this isn't working for me. I don't need to blame, shame, or make the other person wrong or get all caught up in my head. I can actually just walk away. And I think that is a game changer in our culture. And there's the other side of it, which I know you focus on. I don't even know if it's the other side, but it's another aspect of it that I know you focus on so much, which is like, and you even referenced it with your kids, that they're kind. Like at the same time, there's a kindness and there's a like, I care about the impact that, this might be having on another human being, but not at the detriment to myself. So I'm curious if you could speak to kind of that part of it.
So there's a reason that the very first pillar that I teach in clarity boundaries is care, but not self-care,
Mm.
the kind that we've been kind of indoctrinated with on the internet and in the world. Not the kind of care that you can see. So self-care is something someone else could see. Like you could take, I'm taking a bath and somebody can see it. I'm feeding myself well. Another person can see that. I'm getting enough sleep. I'm exercising. These are all things that could be externally validated. So somebody else can see it and can say, oh, right. So that's the genre of self-care, or what I call taking care. So many children are taken care of. They are fed, they are kept alive, they have a roof over their head, they're taken care of. But so many of us are not cared for.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge difference, huge. Like it's night and day. Um, for all intents and purposes, I would tell you I have loved myself very much and gone through all the work of loving myself. But what's more powerful, I'm going to tell you, is liking yourself. And the most powerful of all is caring for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because caring for yourself does not require you to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It has no agenda. There's no, you don't have to jump through any hoops. You don't have to be deserving. It's a caring for yourself. That's what allows you to have really clear boundaries while also giving a shit about other people, but not ahead of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So the paradigm we live in is care for others, fuck yourself. That's really, if I'm going to be really direct, that is what we are living in. We have been taught care about and be responsible for everybody else's well-being, but who gives a shit about yours, because then that's selfish. And so you have all these beautiful, caring people out there in all these professions burning the fuck out and wondering why. Because they're not coming from a surplus of their own clarity and care for themselves. They're giving when they have nothing, when nobody has cared for them. Not even like they have no reference for what that even looks like. So even if there is someone and they're like caring for them, it's like, it doesn't feel good. It feels like something strange and exotic. So caring for yourself is that piece that says, I hear what you're saying about me, and I hear that it's affecting you in that way. Give me a moment to find out what I'm feeling and how I'm affected, and be with myself and hold myself in that, and be able to turn and go, that's not my experience, or I hear what you're saying and I could see that that's true, and I'm sorry. So it's never, you're not manipulable anymore. That piece of like being manipulated or controlled or pulled in a certain direction because something, you know, it stops when you care about yourself. No, when you care for yourself, it's when you have that deep care, you will not accept anyone else treating you badly because you stopped treating yourself badly in any way. And I had to do this. I had to come to this in like a really kind of weird,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
not direct way, because I could care. I found the care for myself by seeing how quickly I would respond on behalf of my children, but not on behalf of myself.
Mm-hmm. I really love all of that. It's actually, it makes, I'm sort of like processing it as a new, as a new kind of like, I don't know, operating system or, you know, kind of concept. It's sort of, I'm still landing with it as I listen. But, you know, also this idea, I mean, to go back to, makes so much sense that, you know, loving ourselves or liking ourselves can be hard in moments, especially with a lot of the conditioning that we have, but that it would be easier to just care for ourselves, which to me means it's like I don't have to like myself in that moment or love myself. I can actually just say, oh, you're hurting right now, what do you need? Or, you know, oh, I need a, you know, having a cup of tea right now would be really soothing. So I think that does kind of bring, I think it makes, there's obviously a lot of emphasis on self-love kind of in our, you know, spiritual self-help communities, but which I think is beautiful, but yeah, it doesn't work. I mean, I actually think what really works is, can we show up for the moment that's happening now with whatever is happening, right? And so I think that the
It's
care makes sense.
part of being comfortable in your own skin
Mm-hmm.
is always having your back, no matter what your behavior is, no matter what shitty thing you did or have done or has happened to you. That's not you. You
Mm-hmm.
look at yourself and say, I got you. This is shitty. Some shitty shit went down. I
Mm-hmm.
got you. I got you. I'm not going to drop you. I'm definitely not going to punch you in the face. I'm not going to kick you when you're down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, and if you look at it, like, you can watch any kind of thing, a movie, or and you see a stranger, somebody you don't know, you cannot possibly love, but your care mechanism responds.
Mm-hmm.
You care for the pain somebody else is going through. Now, I don't mean you take on their shit. You care for them in what they're going through. You care for them in their sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
natural thing. And so when you can, and it's work and it's practice, you begin to turn that inward towards yourself first. I'm afraid. And so what care looks like for me internally, I'm afraid this doesn't feel good. I turned to myself and I said, of course you feel that way. It makes total sense. It's okay. That's the first step. I don't try to like, stop feeling afraid. We got to do this. It's, I hear you. I understand. This makes sense.
Yeah, it seems like that's a beautiful first step. And I can also imagine with the frame of care that it's like, it could also be like, how can I care for you right now? That question, which then puts you in another plate, like a place of sort of what do I, what would be most kind of comforting? Like sort of what's gonna be most soothing or most comforting? You're looking at me like you don't see it that way.
I, I hesitate in this particular way. I hesitate to use questions because it
Uh-huh.
involves the mind. And
Mm,
care, as I know it, there's no language that could possibly, like I've been doing, could encompass what the actual thing is.
mm, mhm,
How it's a mystery to me that that amount of care exists on my own behalf. It, I have no idea. I have no fucking clue where it comes from. I don't even care. The mystery.
You don't even care.
So if I ask myself, how can I care for myself right now? We're kind of turning into the direction of taking care.
Yeah.
Instead of I'm here. I am
Mm,
here and I've got you.
mm, mm. Yeah.
Assurance,
Yeah.
support, and in
Mhm,
what you need is crystal clear to you.
mhm. Yeah. So really, the care is
In
like
that
I've
moment
got.
of like,
it really, the care is like, I've got you and I've got your back. So it's really that kind of, so that's where you were going with like the listening and the, but I think this idea of like really having yourself, right? And having your back. Yeah, it feels like, and what you're speaking to is that it's a direct experience. It's not something that, like, it's like you said, you can't really put exact language to it except to kind of, it continues to get cultivated as you continue to do it, you know, as you continue to kind of tap into that in the moment.
And it's something that happens within you. You can't show it. I can't show you how I care for myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I can't take it on and be like, here's this is what it looks like. Look, like you can't.
Yeah.
And so it's unprovable. This is the mystery. And this is what makes it so purely beautiful to me, because there's no way to externally validate that.
Mm-hmm.
It is a full-on internal place.
Which is so beautiful because
like, yes, and it's for you and it's for you alone.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
The sanctuary that is yourself.
Sorry, we're still having a delay. the fact that you can't validate it, it's such a, it goes back in, it's anti what our culture does of seeking out, right? So that's what's so beautiful about it, is that it's like you can't validate it. It's just you. Like none of the world will ever see that or know that in the way that it's just you. And so I think ultimately it's teaching people how to come back to themselves and, you know, source from their own knowing, which was kind of like the rest of what this conversation was about. Like, how do you know your own boundaries, clarity, what gets in the way of clarity and all of that stuff. So it feels like that really feels.
This is the pivot.
Yeah, and you said that at the beginning in other words, you know, that's the foundation. I want to speak to one more thing before we end too in what you said, because, you know, you went back, you in what you shared in that last part, you were talking about caring for oneself, but also that as we cultivate that, or care for oneself, we'll put it that way, not caring, but care, that then we become kinder and more caring towards others because we truly have that internally. So then the question becomes to me, like, how, I mean, it's a direct experience. How do we teach that? Because I think like with your kids, for example, they get a direct transmission. You've probably taught them all kinds of things, and they get a direct transmission because you're living it. So it's both what you verbally said to them and that kind of implicit knowing, right, that they get from you. So maybe that's the way you teach it as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And then continuous support, continuous unconditional support. So I believe we're like, many of us are very naturally caring, but the mechanism is to care for others. So when the care is established internally, the way so often too, we care. So we give that care externally to get. It's innocent. I don't judge it. I don't have a moralistic view of that. That's just what we're doing to get. And that always is going to feel sticky and empty. And the reason we give so much, and then you'll hear people say, but I'm giving so much and I'm not getting anything. Because it's not coming from this place of like overflow, of like, I have the capacity to give this, and so I'll give it. If I don't, I won't. It's knowing your capacity. So right now, like, we're finite. I'm a human being. I have a finite amount of years and time, and I'm finite. So if I don't have the capacity to give, I don't, and I won't. So that when I do have the capacity, it's just in like a river it's like gushing out of me, and it's everywhere, and it's amazing. So it's that distinction. When you care for yourself, you notice, I just don't have it right now, and I'm not going to give anything. And that's the bleeding edge, because you're going to face all the crap that's told you, like, oh, you know, you're selfish, or da-da-da. It's like, nope, I'm going to know what my capacity is. And it becomes more unconditional. So when you give, you don't give a shit if it ever comes back, because you're already full.
Yeah, and I also feel like that, to me, that's also speaks to just living in one's truth. Like I know for me that anytime, like it's like I don't have the energy or something, you know, there's some deeper process going on, but then I'm trying, it's like, well, I need this to happen, so I'm trying to make it happen. Like it always not only ends up being extremely unenjoyable, but it often doesn't, it doesn't kind of, it doesn't get created, or it doesn't, the thing that I'm even wanting to do doesn't happen, or it doesn't, or it happens in a way that like is, you know, it takes so much time and it doesn't even come out as what I want. But if I deeply listen, like what you're talking about, and I'm in the truth of it, and I'm like, right now I need to rest. Often I'll be surprised, like later I'm like, oh, all of a sudden this flowed out of me and it was beautiful. So I think it does take a tremendous amount of trust to live in that way.
And we've defined doing something hard. What if when you are faced with that energy and you decide to rest, you are doing a hard thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Probably the hardest thing for you in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are all capable of hard things, but I see it from a completely different angle.
Mm-hmm.
The hard thing is to put myself first.
Mm-hmm.
We are all capable of doing that. And just because I put myself first does not mean I don't show up in the world. I have 4 children. I have a business. Like I do show up out here.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's what the beautiful example of that is, right? Is that it doesn't, what you're saying, there's a naturalness that then things that like the more you deeply listen, the more you're in that clarity and truth and authenticity, then it's like the more that will, like you will show up in those ways. But we're taught that we want, you know.
A really clear example is I have 4 kids, but one of them like sometimes really wants to snuggle, and she tends to want to snuggle in the moments where I'm like a big no, and there's a bonding, there's a reason for that, right? When she was little and I was still really struggling and I yelled still, I haven't yelled in forever, but I did. She would not like, none of my kids were ever afraid, but she would run towards me. Like she would hold onto my leg while I was telling her, get off me and stop yelling, I don't like you, right? And she would hold on. And I was like, this kid is weird. But there was the birth, and there was a lot of reasons for that. And so for a long time, I would put up with her snuggling with me when I didn't want it. This was the bonding it's not healthy. And so finally, I just, with this care coming online for me, I was able to say, honey, I love you, and I just can't, I don't want to right now. And she could, I thought, it was going to be a big deal. It was very simple for her. Okay, whatever. And our relationship completely changed. There's a lot of snuggling going on, but it's being done when I want it, when I have the capacity for it. There's a healthy relating going on there, instead of let me sacrifice myself on your behalf because of this shit that I think went down when you were born, and blah, 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 crap. So it changed, and that changed everything. And so I can say no in this very, very intimate way, and everything's still okay. Right? Like it actually increased the value and the.
Yeah, we're gonna have to end just because I have to get out of this booth. But I wanted to just say that that's such a beautiful example that reminds me of like kind of how we do the thing is more important than the thing, right? Like that actually brought more intimacy and more connection because it was the truth and because there was care.
Yeah.
So it's right. That just speaks for itself, I think. Well, it's been so lovely having you on this show. Thank you so much. I just love the work that you're doing with people, and kind of like, I feel like you're revolutionizing our world in this way that's both like simple and not easy, right? But it's like these ways of living that just can be game changers. And I would love for people to be able to, we could probably go on forever on this topic, and maybe we'll do another live. I keep saying that with every single interview because they've all been, the last several have just been so, we could just keep going on forever. But for people who don't know you, I would love for you to share how they can follow you, learn more about your work, and also what any courses you have going on. It sounds like you do have a course going on right now.
The easiest way to find me is on Facebook. I'm not all over the place. My website's very old. So Facebook, and the next thing that's going is the Clarity of Boundaries, and I have wide open space right now, so I think there's about 8 people signed up now, and I will leave it open for 30. That starts in about a week and a half, and it's the last time I'll do it live with myself leading the group live. I don't know what's coming next after that. That's all really. That's the only thing that's going on, or private mentorship spots with me.
And how long is the course? How many weeks?
It's 3 weeks. It's I call it a intensive workshop because it's an intensive workshop. it's like full on 3 weeks, full on. Yeah.
Nice. Well, and yeah, definitely stay tuned. And I would recommend following Shanti. She does beautiful lives and writes just really, I love your writing. I mean, I just love what you're sharing. It's just so human. And I think it allows us to all connect to, that rawness and that kind of just the truth of being human in all of its shades. And once again, my name is Lori Beth. And I have an ongoing one-on-one program that is called Dark Feminine Alchemy. And it's working with women to transform darkness and trauma and like ongoing challenges into beauty and pleasure and purpose. And we do that through the body and through all kinds of somatic and trauma healing work. And it's really the program, I'd say, is really a chance to shift. There's a lot that shifts internally for you and the healing that happens. And it's also about shifting your relationship to suffering and to really challenging emotions and to ourselves, really, to showing up in a more caring, loving, beautiful way with ourselves in whatever we go through. So if you're interested in working with me, please reach out. And I do this show every week. So stay tuned for the next episode. And thanks for tuning in. Okay, bye, Shanti. Thank you so much. Let's see. How do we get out of Facebook?